Are you wondering how to take amazing screenshots like this or this? Don't you worry, I have got your back with this simple tutorial / guide on how you can improve your screenshots from this to this. Hello everyone, I'm Clover and welcome back. So in today's video, we'll cover all the settings that you want to mess with to get the desired screenshots. So the first setting you can mess with in the camera tab is focal length. So you may ask, what is focal length? Well, focal length determines how much of the scene the camera is going to capture, which is calculated in millimeters. So the lower the value, the more it will capture, and the more wide the photo will look. And the higher the value, the more zoomed in the photo will look, with lesser perspective that gives depth to the scene. So look at this example. The left shows a really ultra wide shot with less focal length value, whereas the right one has much of a zoomed look to it. For wide shots, I have found 28mm to be the best suited focal length, and for zoomed shots I would say 150mm is the best you can go, and for the middle ground I would say 80mm is the perfect focal length. So let's move to lens settings. The first thing we can see is depth of field. Depth of field is collection of properties that controls the depth of field effect, which creates the blur effect which you see in photos. So in Cities Skylines 2, we have two focus modes. One is physical and one is manual, but in my testings what I have noticed is the manual setting is the best setting which you can choose. It is a bit complex, but you have a lot much control to in your hands, and you can do a lot of stuffs with it. So in manual mode, you have access to near range start, near range end, far range start, far range end, and max near blur and max far blur. The near range end is the setting which determines what is the closest distance from where the near blur will end. So if I crank this up, you will see the foreground being blurry, and as I increase this, you can see this gets more blurry. So what I'll do is I'll set this to maybe till this commercial over here, and you can see this is much blurry, and then as you go ahead we have got this sharp transition. So to fix this, what we'll do is we'll change the near range start. So what this does is this creates a smooth transition from a blurry foreground to our main focused subject. So I'll start decreasing this, and as you will see, our foreground got in focus. And if I crank this up and go close to near range end, then you will see the line which divides the foreground and the focused subject will get much sharper. It got so sharp that you can see it's blurry till here, and then immediately it's in focus. So we don't want that. So what we want is the near range start to be as low as possible, so that you have this smooth transition. You can set this to 0. 0 means that it's right at the place of camera, and the same thing applies with far range start and far range end. The far range end, you want this setting to be maxed out, because that's the maximum distance Cities Skylines 2 tiles can get. So far range start is basically from where the far range blur will start. The bloom settings are for the sun, so just a flash warning, if we go towards the sun, I'll take this to a corner so that it doesn't blind us. So now what I'll do is go to threshold. So if I increase this, you can see the bloom goes away. If you have the sun in the corner, and as you decrease the setting, the bloom will slowly and slowly come, and with intensity is it's the same basically. So if it's 0, then there's no bloom, and if you increase it and increase it, then the bloom also increases. And the scatter is basically how extreme the bloom can get. So I would say you should keep this around 0.5. So now what I'll do is I'll come back to our position and we'll take a look at vignette. Vignette is the darkness effect that you see in the corners, and as you increase the intensity, the darker the corners will get. And you can also change the settings for the color. You can have it completely white, or if you want it tinted, then you can tint it. And if you want to change the center, maybe you want the vignette to be around here. I don't know why you want that, but you can do that. You don't want vignette to be very strong, otherwise it's very noticeable. And now comes the film grain. Film grain is an effect that adds artificial noise to the photo or video. So you can notice film grain faster in brighter areas. So as I'll increase the intensity, you can notice all the film grain that will come over here. So as you can see, I've maxed out the intensity and you can see this artificial noise. So this can give a good cinematic look if you increase it to a reasonable intensity. And then you have the types. You have a lot more types. I'll increase the intensity to show you. There's thin 1, then there's thin 2, which is a bit more dense than thin 1. Then we have medium 1, which is a much bigger, like the noise is much bigger. Then we have medium 2, medium 3, and as you can see, as we are going from, then we have medium 4, and you can see 5, we have this another thing, then we have 6, and then we have the large noise. You can see the noise is much bigger. Generally film grain are very small, they are not that big, so I should say thin 2 should work perfectly fine. And this is where magic happens, the color tab. So what I'll do is I disable all these settings and I'll show how you can change the look of the city with just a few settings. Post exposure determines the exposure of the game, so you can really decrease it and make it complete pitch black, or you can increase it and make it completely white. Make sure that you don't increase post exposure by a lot because it's quite sensitive. Contrast is basically, again, it controls the range of the tones. The lesser the value you have, the more flatter the image will look, as you can see over here. And as you increase, you can see what happens. Now comes saturation. Saturation is simple, it boosts up the colors or it can take away the colors, and you can have complete black and white 90s look. Tint is basically you can have a complete different tint for your city. So this is something that you don't want to mess with until you want a very artistic or stylized look to your screenshot. Winter look is really bad in Cities Skylines 2. So you want to make sure that you get a perfect middle ground. So for me, at least in winter season in Barrier Island, the perfect middle ground that I've got is minus 7.5. So as you can see, if I go lower, then it will become much colder, and as I increase this above minus 7.5, the more warmer the look will get. Tint is again So as you can see, if I increase this, you have a much more purple look to it, to the white balance. And as you go towards the minus side, the more greener look you have. And now comes the brightness. Brightness actually gives you the full control of what you were getting in exposure setting. So you have shadows, midtones and highlights. Shadow settings control the shadows. You can crank the setting up to have light shadows, and as you decrease this, the shadows get darker. With midtones you can increase this or decrease this to have a perfect brighter city look. So if you think with exposure it is cranking everything up, then what you can do is with midtones you can crank this setting up and you can have a much brighter look to your screenshot. So if I turn this off, you can really see how the clouds and the buildings are popping up after increasing the midtones. Yeah, so you can see in the background over here and the signs of this medical clinic. When I decrease highlights, they become dark and darker, and as I increase them, they go brighter and brighter. Weather is really important in Cities Skylines too, and even in screenshots, weather plays a huge role in making or breaking your screenshot. So what I'll do is I'll show you some settings of distance clouds. The clouds are more broken in cumulus clouds opacity. So as you can see over here, I have maxed it out, and you can see you have like these big chunks of clouds and then you have like these smaller ones. So what you want to do is you have these like smaller chunks. Then for stratus clouds opacity, this is basically like how dense the farthest clouds can be. So these are like the topmost clouds that you can see in the atmosphere. So these basically go above cumulus clouds opacity. So I'll decrease them, and now we'll look at cirrus clouds opacity. So these are like have a more wavy look to the clouds. So if I increase this, then you can see like these have like a much wavy look to the house, like they have to the clouds, they have much more breakup. And if you have these on low settings, then you can have like these small breakups to the clouds. And if you crank it up, then you can see how these looks. And then they are wispy clouds. So basically they are like I would say they just cover up the whole sky. So if I crank this up, then you can see it has basically covered up the whole sky. And one thing I have seen while testing, that the best middle ground for all these four settings is below 0.1. So for cumulus clouds opacity, what we'll do is we'll crank these up till maybe 0.6, where you can barely see them. Then for stratus clouds opacity, I'll increase this to maybe around 0.4. And also these settings also affect the sunlight. So if you max these out, then the sunlight will not be able to reach the ground and it will look more of a overcast day. So if that's what you are for, then you can increase this and you have a much more overcasty look to the scene. And I'll increase the cumulus clouds opacity to 0.7. Then for stratus clouds opacity, I'll increase it to 0.4. Then for cirrus clouds opacity, I'll crank this up to maybe 0.2. I said don't go above 0.1 but Cirrus clouds opacity is something which you want around 0.2, and you should decrease the other two as well so that you can see these clouds more, because these clouds give a much realistic look to the sky. So I'll decrease the cumulus clouds opacity, and I'll also decrease the stratus clouds opacity. And then we have the wispy clouds, so you really want these like around 0.008, so they are like just there in the background. So now as you can see, our scene looks much more alive. Then rotation is basically you can rotate this skybox around. For example, if you don't like these positions, so you can just rotate the clouds and have the perfect position that you want. Now the most useful setting is our fog, which is also very important. So the attenuation distance. So what this setting does is basically from what distance you can see the fog. When turn it on, it's basically at 400 meters. So if I turn it on, you can see this is the effect that you can get. And as I decrease this, the fog will get closer and closer to the camera. So as I decrease this, you can see the fog is getting slowly and slowly closer to the camera. So if you really want like a zombie or apocalypse like type of look where there's like heavy fog, then obviously you can do that. And as I increase the attenuation distance, you can see the fog gets farther and farther away. This is best suited for if you want fog in the background or maybe like a little bit closer to the city, so you can have that. And you can see this affects a lot. Yes, you can't see the sky, but if you enable maximum height and base height, you can tweak these settings to have the perfect fog setting you want. So for example, if I decrease this basically to maybe around over here, from where we can see the fog, and then I'll start increasing the maximum height. As you can see, if I decrease this, the transition from fog to the clear sky is quite sharp. And as I increase this and go past away from the base height value, you can see it gets much more smoother. You can adjust the height. So if you want like a fog that is like in a valley, so you can decrease the base value and then increase the maximum height value to get that look. Or you can do a completely opposite. You can basically increase the height to maximum where you can't see the sky, so you can see like the fog is at quite a distance, so you can see like there's a lot more fog here. And I can control the distance with attenuation distance. So if I want this much closer, I can do that. And I can do the same with the fog in the valley. So I can decrease this to a reasonable height. Then I can decrease the attenuation radius, and you can see the fog coming towards the valley. If I decrease this base height, then you can see there's like a smooth transition for the fog. And as I decrease the base height slowly and slowly, you can see there's like less fog over here. Again, I'm saying this can make or break your city. Like if you want like a very high density fog, then you can increase the base height to around like I would say 350, and then decrease the maximum height to around the same, and you can have these values much closer. And you can have this like a low laying fog, like you can call it smog, which is like mixture of smoke and fog. So you can have these and have like clear background, or you can increase this a little bit to have that smooth transition for it. I would say this will look much better in a downtown. If you are targeting a downtown, for example like this, which looks really good. And as you can see, the player has set this to a medium density height. So as you can see, like the high-res apartments are much clearer, and they have very less fog, and as you go down towards the road the fog increases. So that's basically the look that we are trying to achieve over here. So you can decrease this base height and then have like a very less fog, like just in the background, or you can increase the height to maybe like so, increase the attenuation radius so that the fog stays in the background, or maybe you can just decrease it to like have a little bit fog over there, and decrease the attenuation radius so that fog comes a bit closer to the camera. So you can see the bridge, the end of the bridge starts to fade away. So I would say this is like the perfect height, perfect attenuation distance, and I can increase the height as well. So that will also increase the fog amount. So I would say these three settings are like tied to each other. So if you change one, the others also gets indirectly changed. So you'll have to tweak them according to your liking. Then maximum fog distance is basically how far you can see the fog. So if I enable this and decrease this, you can see there is fog, but it's not in the background. You can see the mountains and the edges very clearly. Then atmosphere is something that you can have. So I'll go ahead and go to night, and I'll come down to atmosphere and aurora intensity. So aurora intensity is again the aurora borealis. So if you increase this, then you can see aurora borealis in the sky, and then it affecting the whole city. So I would say the middle ground for the intensity of it should be around 1 to 2, where you can just see them. You don't want them to light up the whole city like crazy. You can increase it from here if you want a really dramatic look, or you can decrease it or have turn it off if you don't want it. So with the air density settings, I personally haven't seen anything change. I'm showing you the stuffs that you need to have or like mess with to get perfect looking screenshot. So that's it for the weather. And you know, the simulation, you can change time of day. You want like a sunset kind of look, then you can have it. And as you can see, as soon as I turn it to sunrise, the atmosphere color changes, and as you increase it, then you have like the atmosphere color changing as you increase or decrease the time of day. Even if you are making a time lapse of something, then you can change simulation speed as well. So you can either set from your keyboard 1 to 3 by pressing 1 to 3. So 1 is like normal speed, 2 is like the 2x speed, and then 3 is basically 4x speed. So you can change those settings over here, or if you want, you can manually change them and like set to 8. The simulation will be much faster. But again, as Colossal Order have said, as you increase the simulation speed, the more CPU power it consumes. So that's just a small tip to keep in mind. One more tip, I would say this is a much better tip. So as you can see, the water is quite blue, and in some screenshots you would have seen the water has a much more cyan tint to it, so it's not completely blue as the sky. So to achieve that, there's a nice trick to it. What you can do is you can turn your camera down, and as I'm turning my camera down, you can see the color of the water changing from blue to a much more greener look, and you can see the saturation also increases. So if you come towards water, the shadows are much brighter, and as soon as you come to the land, you will see the shadows getting darker. You can see that in the water body. I'll show you. As I go towards the water body, it will get brighter, and as I come towards the land, it will get darker. So that's a tip for you. And then you can mess with the time of day. Time of day also plays a important role. So if you are targeting like a dramatic kind of look, then you probably want your time of day to be much closer to either sunset or sunrise. So if you like have in between, so like for example 12, then you can see like the shadows are top down, they are not at angle, and they look much more flatter. So as soon as I go closer to sunrise, you can see the shadows getting much farther away, and the more farther they are getting, you can see they are getting much more brighter. So to get that dark look, what you can do is go to color, go to brightness, and decrease the shadow, so you have that contrast look to it. And you can have saturation according to your liking, and you can have the screenshot grab. Or for example, if you're going towards a more of sunset look, then you can go to like for example 16.8 or 16.6, which is like perfect. So the best example I can give you for the ground fog or smog look, so what I'll do is I'll go to fog, and I'll decrease the maximum height to around like 400. I'll increase the base height, and as you can see, when you just see like it popping up from ground, you can stop there and you can increase the maximum height from there, so you have a much more smoother look. So you can see I have this kind of look to my city, and since this hill is like quite at a height, so the fog is not here, so I can decrease this and have a much more smoother look to it. So I can increase the height to maybe for example here, and I can increase the attenuation radius so that the fog is not that thick, and I can maybe set my focal length to 150 and have a much dramatic look to my scene. As you can see, if I go up, the shadows get darker, and if I come down, there's some sort of auto exposure, even though you can set your manual exposure, but there's still auto exposure for the game. So I mean, it's not a big deal. You can set it according to your liking and then change the settings in photo mode. I'll come over here to our fog settings, and what I'll do is just switch off the maximum fog distance, because I want it to run till as far as it can go. And the cinematic mode is basically the same. You can come to 0, then come over here to capture a key, or basically set a position, set a keyframe, and you can come to maybe like 20 second if you want, and you can move your camera a bit. So basically, if I want to like come closer and show my city, so I can set another keyframe, and if I go back and just play, it's that simple. You have endless possibilities, and you can do whatever you want with this. So I can come over here and select this keyframe and select minus to remove the keyframe. Or for example, if you want to start from scratch, you can go just reset this and delete everything. For example, if you want to record, so what I've seen is the save thing doesn't work. It doesn't save a file. Like you would think it would save MP4 or MOV or MKV format, but it doesn't. It it has like its own file. So I would recommend that you download a free recording software, basically like OBS or something, and you do your thing over here, like have your animation and cinematics, and just hit recording and hit play and edit it later on. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing that creators are doing. They're just recording it and hitting the record button and then just hitting play, and then you have your animation. I hope you liked this video, this tutorial, this guide. Then please hit like button, and if you want to see third episode of our city, then hit the subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Peace out.